Okay, we did it. We're live. Yay!
Yay!
What an adventure. Thank you so much for joining me live to talk about the adventure of parenting little ones living with ADHD and whatever else we get off to talking about it.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yay. Well, where to start, right? We just decided to jump on and just share. So I guess we could start out with kind of our shared story of ADHD during the pandemic, or some of it is shared. And certainly, if I forget any good points, that you know my whole story, please help me remember them so I can share them.
Okay.
But as a licensed clinical psychologist, and I started out, I don't know if you probably know this already, but my first degree was in human development psychology. So I worked with little ones with Down syndrome, little ones with ADHD, and thought I wanted to be a school psychologist, but then kind of veered off into more adult work. However, for 15 years, as the basically school psychologist for Brooklyn Job Corps Academy, a part of my work was working with people who live with ADHD and other neurodiversities and educational challenges. So, as the school psychologist, I reviewed IEPs. I talked to students to make sure that we could provide them whatever accommodations they needed in school. So ADHD is not new to me. And then in private practice, I also worked with a number of people who were living with ADHD. However, when the pandemic hit, I, I realized that this was something that was hitting home. Right? So it wasn't just theoretical, and it wasn't just the people that I work with, but something at home for my little one who I will call Kay, um, that it was really difficult, that adjustment to abruptly leaving school, abruptly leaving the structure, right, of school, the familiar structure, homeschooling, and what I knew about ADHD, not one of the things that I didn't usually do is I didn't usually do the evaluation. So people came to me already with the diagnosis.
Right.
And so I knew what to do from there. My little one didn't have a lot of H. And I'll come back to what I mean by that in terms of hyperactivity. And is a very calm, easygoing person. And so it was a little harder to recognize. But once recognized, I realized, okay, I'm going to have to bring all my momminess and all of my PhD skills to this challenge. And I did. But I also realized that I needed to learn a lot more. So I did this 50-hour workshop with the Amen Clinic,
That's right.
which was, I learned about brain scans and like all sorts of information. And then after that, I can't tell you how many books I've read and how many other, seminars, workshops, classes, anything I could get my hands on that was about ADHD, bringing that in. And so basically, with my little K, the first step was really listening, you know, which is so hard to have your child in pain, so
Mm.
hard. And it was really, really, really challenging. I remember that Kay was having an emotional, it was an emotional turmoil one night. And I remember because it was rainy and it was kind of dark outside and it was late. And I just listened and had to try to stop myself from crying because I wanted to fully be there for Kay. But the things Kay was sharing was so, like, the emotional turmoil, the pain, just feeling so distraught. It was heartbreaking.
Mm.
But that was one of the things that kind of opened the way. My just listening, it's so powerful. And I know this, and this was a reminder. I know this as a psychologist, because there are days that I am working with clients, and at the end of the session, I'm thinking, I didn't really do anything today. And the clients feel so much better. And that reminds me the power of listening, having somebody to really fully hear you is so powerful. So, really fully hearing Kay was difficult for mommy, but was really powerful and really shifted things. Right. Because before that, I was frustrated. Kay was frustrated. My husband was frustrated. We're all like, oh my gosh, like, just do the work. Why is this so hard? It should be easier. You're home. Just do the work. Um, I got a better understanding of why it was so hard. And then Kay and I partnered, and together we were able to start creating systems, some deep breathing to help with anxiety, homework check ins, and really, but you know this as a speech language pathologist, right? That communication is such a foundation for everything else. So once Kay felt heard and saw that I was trying to understand, and there were moments when I said, I don't get this. I don't help me understand. I don't get it, or I don't know if I can ever fully get it, but I want to be here to help you. And that honesty seemed to really help. That communication seemed to really help, so that we were able to partner together. And from that partnering, we were able to figure out systems for homework, um, systems for getting work done in school through homeschooling, systems that have carried over to going back to school, even created a great system to get chores done. And it was all just listening, partnering, having empathy and understanding, and looking at superpowers. Right? Really looking at this child and not seeing lack and struggle. Yes, we were in struggle, and yes, there were things, places, and spaces where it felt like, why can't we just do this? But really striving at every moment to focus on how brilliant Kay is, how funny Kay is, right? How when Kay uses that superpower of going full in on something, right, can come up, think out of the box, come up with amazing stuff. And so I'd say those are the main things to, if we can listen to our children with empathy, if we can partner with them to come up with things. And Kate now is 14, was like, I guess 12ish so when this started. But I have worked with people with younger children, and you can still partner with them. I mean, might be a little different when you're partnering with somebody that's 2 or 3. And again, you can talk to that as a speech language pathologist, as you used to work with little people. Um, but it's really understanding and using that information to keep trying to, and having, I know I've said so much already, right? Having this mindset of, this is an experiment, right? And we're going to keep, you know, working with it until we figure it out together. So anyway, I'm so happy that I went back to learn more and didn't just assume that I knew everything. I love being a lifelong learner, and I'm always learning more, and then integrating what I learn from the people I work with, as well as from the books and courses and stuff. Always integrating what I learn into what I do. And it was challenging, but really nice to be able to bring it home and have all of the stuff that I know, apply it here and have it work and have it help. All right. I know I talked. So that's kind of my story. And I'm sure there's more, but I'm going to stop talking now because I want you to share your story.
Well, I've enjoyed listening. And before I go on to my story, I would add to the pieces, the components of your story that I find most powerful is that sometimes as parents, we are so invested in our children, which all of us are, especially moms. Sometimes that investment can produce fear or anxiety and almost like stages of grief. So we have a certain set of expectations for our children of how they're going to move through life. And ADHD is typically not one of them that we expect.
Yes.
But then when we come across some of the symptoms, it can be very frustrating. It can produce a lot of anxiety for the parent, both on the level of production for the child, whether it's homework or chores or whatever it is that we're trying to get them to produce that they're not producing. But the other component of it is for ourselves and how we feel about that. And I think that a lot of times we as parents have to go through stages of grief in terms of we may have expected a certain thing in our children, and then it turns out that they're not that way. So to move from a place of shock, disappointment, grief, bargaining, to move through to acceptance is such an important first part, and to be honest with ourselves and to have our community, like you're such an integral part of my community, my family's community, that we can rely upon our closest friends, our family, to help us make those mind shifts to get to a place of acceptance. So once you have acceptance, then you can do the communication, the listening with empathy, and really say, okay, how can we partner together on this? So I think that's a really important part of what you did even before.
Thank you. I'm glad you pointed that out because you're so right. It all starts with that acceptance so you can make the mind shift. And that can be really difficult. It can be really, really challenging as a parent to accept your child as they show up in your life. And yeah, we have a tendency to look at all of the negative, right? And that can make it hard for us to see all of the positive qualities. Yeah. But that gratitude is part of, I think, I don't want to, you have to feel your feelings. Right? And so it's okay to have feelings of sadness, of grief. Like all of that is part of the process of accepting and letting go. But it's also part of that process, or part of what helps make the shift is, after you feel the feelings and identify the feelings, to start looking to gratitude. What are you grateful for? And what are the superpowers that your child has? Because those are the spaces and places that can refill you with joy, right? As you let go of the frustration and the anxiety and the grief, you're filling yourself with joy and connecting with happiness, which helps you connect with, more empathy, more patience, all of that.
Yes, I completely agree. And I think that we're touching on something critical for parents, because if you don't do this pre-work as you go through the process, it might feel more frustrating along the way if you really haven't come to a place of acceptance.
Yes.
You mentioned gratitude, which I think is such an incredible key component. Um, I would also add spirituality, whatever it is that our faith is, that we believe that our child is divinely perfect in a way that they've come to the earth for a purpose and plan, specifically related to parenthood or motherhood, that they teach us things. And
Mhm.
that this journey begins with the parent or the caregiver understanding that the child is in their life, even to teach them, whether it's more patience or how to partner. And so once we see it in that way, then we can proceed with the level of empathy, the level of grace that we need to. That also facilitates communication. So my journey as a mom for one of my children, because I have three girls, so I tend to say one of my children, and that way no one is ever feel like, Mom, you were talking about me. So I'll talk about one of my girls for the purposes of this. And one of my girls is absolutely brilliant, and so brilliant that there were, yeah.
All of your girls are absolutely brilliant. Just
She's
knowing, I claim these girls as my nieces. So that we can say, sorry to interrupt the story, but they're all brilliant.
That's a really good point and a very important correction. Thank you, Auntie Audra. Absolutely. So yes, so all of my girls are brilliant, and the one that I'm talking about is also brilliant, as the others are. And the one who I'm talking about has tested far above grade level. So that was the first thing that was so. The symptoms of ADHD can sometimes be hidden under certain things, and you might, as a parent, mistake it for something else. So qualities like forgetting library books consistently and saying, but I told you. And so as a parent, you think that you are communicating something to your child. And as a speech pathologist, I can say the way that you know that you've effectively communicated is if the child produces that action. But as parents, it's important to not take those things personally or to think that the child is just being lazy or neglectful or something else, to understand the child might need additional supports. And so once we shift from, okay, the child's not listening to me, they're being disobedient or they're being, lazy, selfish, self-centered, to that support space, then we can seek the kind of technical that you offer, the kind of strategies and lessons that you offer that are brilliant and that help everyone have a more peaceful and integrative existence. So it was really important for me to understand, and you helped me understand, that ADHD presents in different ways. It might look like things that appear to be not listening, but it's really something else. So once you identify that your child has a difference, a learning difference, then you seek the support. So the kind of support that you're offering is invaluable. So things that you've helped us with include setting systems in place, so that things are not unpredictable to them. Because I find that for the daughter that I'm thinking about that has ADHD, she benefits from having regularly scheduled programming. Additionally, understanding that the frontal lobe, right, that we talk about as speech pathologists and psychologists, that their brain development is not online. So they might end up forgetting their phone, their laptop. To be able to have the expectation as a parent that they need executive functioning support, and that as a parent, you can be that executive functioning support, stand in the gap for them until you help them develop that skill set, is another really important mindset. Once you come out of that, they're not listening to me, they're being lazy, and oh, they need support. And then I can provide the support. And then this is how I can provide the support. Those 3 steps are things that you are brilliant at, and you can help parents do so well. So I'm really excited that you're going to be working with people in this space, because you've been so instrumental in our journey.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh my gosh, you said so many important things there. Um, One, I wanted to back up, which is probably one of the places we should start, but acknowledging that parenting, right, comes in all sorts of forms, right? That some people who are parenting did not give birth to children, didn't even adopt these children, right? Their grandchildren, their nieces and nephews, that somehow you are responsible for helping, right? So just want to acknowledge that, because I know that sometimes in my excitement and in talking that I might kind of default. And so I want to make sure that everybody knows that I'm acknowledging all kinds of parenting, and that you don't have to be a mom or a dad to be parenting children.
Yeah.
The other thing that I think is really important to understand is that ADHD and neurodiversity, I am dyslexic. That's neurodiversity. Like there's a whole bunch of stuff that counts as neurodiversity, and some of it overlaps, right? So which makes it kind of difficult sometimes to figure out this stuff, that there's an overlap between being introverted. There's an overlap with autism, and some of the same qualities may be there. Some of the same challenges, qualities might be there, and then there's a whole spectrum, right? That you can have somebody that is living with autism, that is that is not verbal at all, not communicative at all, and then you can have somebody else that is a lawyer, and just seems to have some social troubles, but is highly functioning and doing very well in life. So these all are on a spectrum, and so is ADHD, where you have some children who can barely sit still, have a lot of difficulty concentrating. And then you have other children who, I said I want to get back to the H and the importance of the H, because there is some controversy, and there's often professional controversy about, things. about whether it's ADD and ADHD are the same thing, attention deficit disorder. And I don't even like the word disorder because I really think of it as neurodiversity.
Yes.
But we qualify things as disorders, it's insurance and stuff. But so I'll go with the labels that we currently have, but to know that I think of it as neurodiversity. I don't think of it as a disorder. This is just the way you live. I don't think of my having dyslexia as a disorder. It's just the way my brain is wired, and it requires me to need some special supports in these some areas.
Yes.
That's just what it is. So ADD, attention deficit, compared to ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity. And so traditionally we think of the hyper as being really, fidgety and movie and needing to go all the time. And for some people, that's exactly how it shows up. But for other people, uh, the hyper can be internal. So it can be more about brain, thoughts popping all over the place. And that is also can be considered hyper. So some of us, think of that everybody has ADHD and just the H can be more internal than external. And some believe that, they're two separate things, and so I don't know if it really matters. I like to really look at each individual and look at the challenges that they're having and the spaces of excellence that they have, and look at how things show up for each person.
Yes.
Because no matter what you label it as, if you label it ADD or ADHD, John is going to look different in John than in Jane, than in Sarah, than Kufe, right? All of them. It's going to look different because our brains are wired different. Some of what was fascinating with the Amen Clinic is looking at the brain scans. Brain scans were more helpful in kind of identifying which parts of the brain were active and which parts of the brain were quiet when they should be active. That was very helpful in identifying more of what are going to be the challenges here and what are going to be the strengths here. And so I think that's much more important than the label. But labels serve a purpose, and certainly we need a label in order to get extra time on tests and stuff like that. But I don't want people to get stuck on labels because then you miss seeing the whole person, which is why I try to always say, I don't always do this well either, but I try to always say living with as opposed to have. Because very often when we say somebody has something, it's kind of like it defines everything about them. It stops there.
Yeah.
But we're all living with different things. We all have challenges. Some of us are living with the inability to dance. You're not calling that a disorder, right?
I love it.
So if we think about it as, we live with this is our neurodiversity, which I also like that term because, diversity, we have, it's just another area of diversity. And really then think about more functional. What are the challenges here? What are the strengths here? Never just looking at the challenges without the strengths, because that's imbalance. None of us have challenges without strengths. We all have a combination of both. And as we look at the combination of both, we can use those strengths to help balance out some of the challenges. Part of my dyslexia is I don't have a very good sense of direction, but I'm actually a very good map reader. And that's helped me think. I love the GPS now, I have to say. But I used to have a map for every place that I'd go. And I'd have to pull over to the side of the road. But if I got oriented, I could follow a map. Now, some people who don't have dyslexia can't read maps, right? So it's
Yeah.
really about finding your strength, because I was able to use that strength to help me deal with this challenge. And as we help our children find their superpowers, right? Their superpowers, and we can help them deal with their challenges. They can use that superpower to draw on, and that superpower can reduce the challenge or help them find ways over, around, and through obstacles. That's the way I like to think about it. Right? Tenacity is all about finding ways to go over, around, or through obstacles. And if we have tenacity in life, we can get further than anything else. Last thing I'm going to say, and then I'm going to let you talk again, is lazy. Right? I would love if we could just get rid of that word out of the language, because I don't, and maybe I'm wrong. I haven't met every single person, and you've probably met a lot more people than I have. But I truly believe that we are all doing the best that we can. And that when we call somebody lazy, the reality is they may be depressed, which lowers your energy. They may be overwhelmed, which lowers their energy. If
Yeah.
you are living with ADHD, and the way the brain tends to be wired with ADHD is there's stuff that they're highly interested in, ready to go, right? People who don't have ADHD, there's stuff that none of us like to do, but people who don't have ADHD it's easier for us to kind of do that stuff anyway. People who have ADHD, they need some extra ways, just like I need extra ways to find directions. They
Yeah.
need extra ways to move that stuff into a space where they can work on it anyway.
Yeah.
And so, no, that's not lazy.
Yeah.
Right? So if we can get rid of that word and use that instead, if you think lazy, think, something else is going on here. Right? This is an indication that we need to find something because, tired might be it, not getting enough sleep, right? So you're tired. So is that lazy? No, that's tired. And I don't think that there's really anything that if you look at on the surface might be lazy, but if you look underneath, there's always something else going on under there. And so to stop labeling, or don't stop there. Even if you start out with, okay, lazy, let's look for what's underneath there. There's something else going on, because even kids want to get something done, right? And so for them to be lazy, there's something else going on, because even they want, even if it's to get the damn chores. Oh, excuse me, can we say that on live? I don't know. To get the chores done so that they can go play, right? But if they're not getting that done, and so they can't go play, that's not lazy. Something else is happening. All right. So once again, I'm going to try to bring my enthusiasm. Rein it in.
I love your enthusiasm. And that's part of what makes you a brilliant coach for individuals and families. As you said, parents of all varieties, parents of biological, parents by connection, parents by love, parents by heart.
Yes.
Um, what also makes you brilliant is your cultural understanding. So lazy, when I think of that word, I think of slavery. I think of the roots of slavery, and a lot of African American people still use that word, I think, because it has followed us through that legacy, and something that sometimes people think is really far away, but it actually is not, only a couple of generations. So
Yeah.
even our language and our mindset are still connected. And so to have the kind of mindset shift that you're making with neurodiversity and with specific qualities in terms of what motivates people. So you mentioned individuals who are living with ADHD and how they're motivated by, a specific task, being driven in specific areas, kind of hyper focused on something, is a superpower, instead of seeing that as um, a disability, or, like you said, a deficit of some kind, to mind shift that into a superpower, and to find out how you can support the person living with ADHD to channel that into productivity. And the kinds of skills and systems that you provide are so helpful for that, to be able to channel that directedness into productivity. Also, understanding that everyone is individual, everyone is different. And so we all need support in different areas. Every human being on earth needs support in different areas. And in this particular case, individuals with ADHD need the structure and support systems that you offer. So I think that your structure and support has revolutionized my family. And it revolutionized the way that I think about it. And therefore, not only am I not frustrated, I'm able to live and move in peace, and to support my daughter in ways that help her to be the best version of herself, which is what we're all working for.
That's what really gives us joy as parents. And I want to get back to what you said spiritually, because I think when we find our spiritual center, and when we think whatever that spiritual center is, it helps us shift away from this a very worldly center about parenthood. The worldly center about parenthood is, I have this child's going to do what I want them to do, right? They're going to pick the career I want them to pick. They're going to live the kind of life I want them to live. And sometimes that comes out of our own trauma, right? Because of whatever we didn't get. And I can say this as a currently middle class African American. I was not raised as a middle class African American. So definitely wanting my child to have all of the opportunities I didn't have. But wanting to provide opportunities is different than dictating what kind of life they have, right? Dictating, well, for example, I love dance. Okay? Dance is my passion. And I would have been a dancer had I seen how to do that as an African American kid growing up and live. I couldn't imagine in my head, if you become a dancer, you're going to be a starving artist. And I was not into starving. And so I would have probably been a dancer. If I was only going on an ego basis and not on a spiritual basis, then and both of my children actually are good dancers. I would have pushed to have them dance. My oldest was a dance major in junior high school, and I was thrilled. But you know, pushing a child to do something that is not in their nature, which sometimes we want to do, and I totally get that, but that's about us. It's not about them. Recognizing that, and it's not easy. And I'll end the story with the current child and in that space. But when we recognize that our children are gifts for us from God, right, and
Yes,
opportunities for us to learn and grow, but they
yes,
have their own path, and finding that space and place and balance between culture and wanting them to have the best, but also giving them space for their own path. And where I can say that's been more challenging in some ways, that the dance thing was kind of in some ways easy for me to let go. I could see how, because it was a desire that I had, I could see how some parents would want to push and how I could have wanted to push for that. But the harder one was Chinese. My little one is gifted in language. And at 2.5, the preschool they went to was one where they exposed them to all the languages. And the Chinese teacher comes up to me at 2.5 and says, "Your child is better than some of the older children. You should put your child in a class." So I did. And my little one is quite gifted at language. And if you close your eyes and listen to this one speak in Mandarin, you would think it was a native speaker. My little one does not like Chinese, does not like taking Chinese. And I in my head, this will set you up for life forever. Right? If you can speak Chinese, Spanish, and English, right? If you got these three languages in this world, you can conquer the world, because that covers like 90% of the world, probably maybe even 100%, these three languages. My little one doesn't like Chinese. And we went on for a while, but ultimately, where is my child getting joy? Okay. And what is necessary? Okay. English and math are necessary, right? You can't graduate from high school without English and math. You can graduate from high school without Mandarin, especially the child has another language. So it's not even like we're missing a language requirement. Um, I had to let that one go. And that was a little harder because, again, in my head, this was an opportunity. I'm setting you up, right, to conquer the world. Well, you know what? My kid may not want to conquer the world. My child wants to use law to help people with disabilities. Do you really need Chinese for that? Maybe, maybe not. All I can say is that there are things that are harder to let go, but we really have to balance out, all of these things. And like what I like to say is pick your battles, although I'd like to find a less like war way of saying that. But you have to pick your battles, and Chinese was no longer worth it. It wasn't worth making my little one unhappy, right? When there were other things that were more important. So if I'm gonna have to, you know, push you to do work, I'm gonna push you to do math. Right? I'm gonna push you to do the stuff that is required and let go of some other stuff. And that's just helped everybody, right?
yes.
But it first required me to let go. And that was not easy, as you know, because we've talked about it a few times, right?
Oh,
That was
yeah.
not
Oh,
easy.
yeah.
And there's probably still a little secret hope in there somewhere. Someday they'll understand why. Well, someday they will, and maybe one day they'll get mad at me for letting it go. But ultimately, at this time, and I truly believe we can only we do the best we can in this moment. Okay? In this moment, having to make a decision about where we can let something go to ease some of the load, so that there's more capacity in other spaces. Chinese had to go. 10 years from now, we might look back, but hindsight's 2020. And I really try to when the people I work with and for myself, to not beat myself up over decisions, because when I make a decision, I factor in everything, but I can only factor in this in here and now. I don't
That's
know what the future holds. So you make the best decision you can, and then you live with it, and it's all in divine order. And so I really try to stay in that space. I'm really, trying to stay in that space with this, and it is what it is. And it was a harder one to let go, though. So that's the truth of it, is that I really, in my head, in a minute, for a while, I had this idea that my kid would conquer the world with 3 languages and be so impressive as a little brown person walking into any space, and and be able to speak those languages and understand when people were speaking about them in those languages. But my kid's happier now.
She's much happier and she's divine. And it's interesting what you said about us not knowing the future, because what you said about conquering the world is something that I've thought about for many, many years. Now, my oldest is 22, and there were many times that I wanted to push her into one direction or another because I wanted her to conquer the world. And what I've realized and come to realize as a parent, again, to the ego, the humility of parenting, how just naturally, if you're doing it right, breaks down your ego and puts you in a place of humility. I don't know what the world is going to look like when she's of age. So maybe, like, one decision that I can think of, she really wanted to play the drums. And I said, well, the saxophone's much better and it'll get you further. And maybe it will be the drums that will help her conquer the world, because the world is not as we will know it in 5, 10, 20 years from now. So to let your children lead you in those moments where you do have flexibility, it's not a math requirement, it's a music elective or it's a language elective, to let them lead with their heart, it also prepares them to start listening to their inner guidance, which
Yes.
is critical for their lifetime. So only they know their purpose on earth. And as parents, we need to relinquish that. So I've learned that many times for 22 years.
Yes, and to bring it back to ADHD, I think it's especially important because very often for children living with ADHD, it requires a lot of trying this and trying that and trying the other thing until they find the things that light them up, that they're passionate about, the things that they can spend all day doing. And so it can be frustrating for parents sometimes, but you said you wanted to do this, but to just allow it to be more of a space of exploration. And that might mean that you don't spend $20,000 on this thing until you're really clear that this is a true passion. You keep it to a couple exploratory classes, and you really have the conversations before you invest that much. That's a you know, it's a way of doing things that helps you hold on to your inner peace and frustration, because that's where I know some frustration can come from having an image of what your child could be doing, and other frustration can come from, I just spent a lot of money on that,
Exactly.
or a lot of time on that.
Okay.
So finding opportunities, and they're out there if you look for them, where it's a week-long class. Like my little one right now is in a week-long law program. It's just a
Yeah.
week. So it was perfect. It's like you love it or you don't love it, but now you've tried it out, and it's a small commitment. So trying to make those test opportunities smaller commitments, and giving your child an opportunity to really explore the world and trust that they will find things that light them up, and make them excited, because that is a frequent superpower of ADHD, is the hyper focus. When finding something that they love, they can go all in all day, every day, and never get tired of something that they're really passionate about.
Mm.
So we should start wrapping up this incredible. I know we could talk. We could talk and do talk and have talked all day.
And it's so much fun.
It is fun. So community, right? We're a community for each other around this. It's really helpful in those moments as a mom when you want to pull your hair out. Because just because we said all this and we've conquered a lot of it doesn't mean that we still don't have frustrating moments. And to be able to say, "Can you believe this happened?" Or it's nice to have somebody else that gets it and understands your basic direction, right? That the direction is that you want this to be a happy, independent child, so that they can support you in getting back your inner peace, helping you get that mind shift back after your community listens to you, and together you can kind of mind shift back and come up with solutions. And one of the reasons why I think programs group programs are so powerful is that it's not just like, yes, I'm brilliant at ADHD and systems, but I haven't conquered every single problem. And it's so nice for other people to chime in. It's so nice to hear because sometimes we don't even realize that this is an issue until we hear some other parents. I might be coaching some other parent and somebody's just listening and it's like, oh gosh, you mean that's an issue? Or oh gosh, there's a solution. So we learn a lot by watching other people,
Oh,
and we feel better when we know that this is not just us, that other people are going through it. So the group component of this is really so that we have that support, to build that support, and to hopefully have other people find connections like you and I have, so that even after the program, there's somebody that you can connect with and say, this is what happened with my child today. Kind of, help me do this set shift so that I can let go of the anxiety and the frustration and get back to that place of peace and joy and figuring out how to approach this. Because we can't do, none of us, even a professional, I can't do it all by myself. I didn't do it all by myself. I had your help and support. I might have the professional systems and stuff, but I needed somebody to release it with first before I could even start to think about it constructively. I need to let it go. And that's one of the things that you were able to do with me, is help me talk about it. Um, Maybe even cry about it sometimes, and feel scared for my little one, worried about my little one, and not put that on my little one, right? That I was able to do that with another adult, and then do that in exchange. I think that is so important, that people have community for, I think about community for everything, that. Definitely for these most challenging things, it's really important.
absolutely. And the thing that the community can do is that, like you said, you can carry over together what you learn in a class and you can walk by each other's side, hand in hand through life. Classes are critical and amazing, and experts are critical and amazing. And being with someone to actually activate those things in your everyday life isn't, it goes into an ADL, activities of daily living space, when
Yes.
you have partnership to walk together through life, and it's so powerful.
Yes. Yes, it is. All right. Any final words before we bring this wonderful live to a close today?
Thank you so much for having me, but even more so, thank you for being that person that walks with me through these things, with having ADHD and being able to both set systems and success for my daughter, but also for myself to have peace and productivity. I am deeply grateful.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you for being by my side and helping me as well. And it's been a pleasure because I love all of my nieces.
I love you too.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.